Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for coming down to see our wonderful team. I am Nicholas Grignon. I'm from Coachhouse. I was running the first class here, preparing Adam to take over as instructor. I have gotten to see several really good cohorts in my time at Coachhouse. This has probably been my favorite. They have been really intelligent, really driven, and they've worked really well together as a team, overcoming all the obstacles together. They've only made them stronger. I'm really proud of these guys and excited for what they have to show you. So without further ado, here's Team Aquamarine.
Awesome. So thank you all for coming. We're really excited to introduce you to our new project, Typing++. My name is Connor Crossley. I'm a software development apprentice with CBT Nuggets. I live here in Bend with my fiance, my big fluffy dog, and my wonderful family. What drove me to coding, and more specifically this program, was a deep passion for solving difficult problems, which coding allows me to do, and working within a team like this team's been outstanding. I also decided it might be time for me to settle into a career, and I don't think I could have picked a better one than this.
Hi, my name's Megan, and I'm a software developer, and I'm heading to 5 Talent as an apprentice in the fall. And my reason for doing this is to show my 2 beautiful little girls that they can do whatever they want to do, and I'm trying to lead by example.
Hi, I'm Sharon Miller, and I am a software developer and will also be at 5 Talent this fall. And I have been married for the past 15 years, and I have 3 kids, 2 of which are here today. And prior to this, I've been a graphic designer, so I am just thrilled to be able to bring some of those design skills, and it's been really fun, especially with this project, to bring design skills into software development and kind of see how that, the critical thinking and the problem solving that I also love to do, it can be incorporated with the design skills and work together with the team to make really neat websites and software.
And I'm Alex Hansen. I'm a software developer apprentice going with 5 Talent in the fall. I think I have a wonderful family which helps to spur me on, and I have 2 very bright little boys who help me to think more. I think the 2 greatest motivators for me are that when I get to create new things that are like functional, it makes me really excited. And I also like seeing how capacity is built in other people. So for me, I'm really excited to have found something where I can develop a tool set that, one, will allow me to create new things, and that's basically just limited by creativity. And then, on the other hand, to also learn how to put it into practice helping it.
So the software and website that we created is called Typing++, and our thought process behind it was to create a software or a typing game that's aimed at helping developers become better typers. So there's a lot of unique syntax that we use in coding, and we noticed as we were starting out that we were really fumbling with the keys, and so we thought, well, let's try to solve that problem. So we came up, before we started our process, we came up with some user stories, and we wanted to highlight a couple of those. So as a user, one of the things that we really wanted to be able to do was to use those uncommonly used keys in proper coding syntax, and also just to become more familiar with the common syntax patterns in JavaScript. As a developer, we just really wanted to help people learn their coding better.
So we navigate back to our site. We can just take a moment to do a demonstration of what the site is and how it works. This was our About Me page. We saw this earlier. If you're interested in learning more about us and the process as we go along, you'll see that these cards flip around and they have our LinkedIn and our GitHub information. So if you are interested, it's actually hosted. You can go into typing and write it out ++.com. You can get to this program now too if you want to learn more about us. So we navigate back to the home page. This is where the user lands. And if you look at, actually, before we've done anything in our on our site, we already have 2 things that have come up in our local storage, which is basically just a group of users that are default users, so we can populate a high score page in case somebody doesn't quite make it. So now if we go down here and we go to play, it actually doesn't mean that you have to put in something. So we put in a name, and let's say it's Sharon, okay? Now Sharon gets taken to our main game page. You look up in the upper right-hand corner, and you see that because Sharon wasn't in our users, her score is 0, and she's on the first level. And then underneath that, you'll see there's a timer bar. And what happens is when we start the game, that bar is going to decrease, and those bugs are going to get closer and closer to being squashed. And that's our goal, is to squash the bugs before we get to the flames in our fire, because we need to implement DevOps. So if we try this now, and we start typing in, the letters that we're typing in down here shake when we don't get the right letters. And then it goes, she's trying to get all of those things in there before the time ends. If she doesn't quite get there, then what's going to happen is right at the end, the timer bar is going to finish, and it's going to take us to the high score page. And you can see that she didn't quite make it up there. And these are all the children associated with this. So not purposely. So now if we go back, and let's say we're going to call ourselves Jasper. Let's say Jasper wants to play it again. Yay! And so Jasper actually played this once before. He has a score of 999,000 already. Now let's say she passes the first level. There we go. Okay, now let's say Jasper is kind of running low on energy and he needs to go get some coffee. So he's going to navigate out of this. And he goes and makes some coffee, and then he comes back and he's going to play it again. So he types in Jasper again. And because we already have his information stored in the local storage, then we come back to it, and it still says his score up at the top, and we're on the second level. So now we're going to go back in, and this time we're going to complete it out, because Jasper has worked on his typing dexterity with typing++. And he's going to make it all the way through. And we actually have 7 levels total, but for the purposes of the demonstration, we kind of tuned it down to 3 levels just to kind of make it manageable so you didn't have to watch us go through all of them. But he got really quick that time. And you see the high score up at the top, which has to do with the percentage of like how far down the timer went, and then it added each level.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tech blocks that we ran into when developing the site. One of the big ones I think we all shared was not getting quite all the tools that we needed to build this site during our education. So we got really good at seeking out the documentation, going on to MDN, reaching Stack Overflow, and really kind of sharing knowledge between everybody on the team to get past some of those obstacles. For me specifically, getting that timer to work the way we wanted it to, having never dealt with timing in JavaScript before, was a huge hurdle, but it was a lot of fun to get past.
So one of my blocks was just starting out. GitHub and Git push can be very confusing on branches. So I think in the end we had 23 total branches, maybe more because we worked on it a little bit this morning. But just kind of keeping track of where everybody else was at. Luckily, we had a really good team agreement where we kind of solidified every step that we needed to take so we wouldn't come up with any merge conflicts. And I think within the whole project, we only came up with 2 minor merge problems, which were very easy to solve.
For me, one of the biggest challenges with like the tech blocks in general was when we were trying to create that animation for the shaking text and validating the characters. We realized that like when you do it, it just wants to happen once. And we had to find that there was other types of listeners that we could use that look for like when the animation ends, and then you had to go in and take the listeners out and put them back in the right order for it to actually happen multiple times. And that kind of took a little bit to figure out using documentation.
So the block that I ran into the most often was working with the CSS and HTML. I would take my wireframe and I had everything lined up perfectly just how I wanted it. The buttons looking just right and matching, and then somebody would change the JavaScript code and all of a sudden everything went wonky and I had to go back in and fix it. So one thing that I got really efficient at was pulling out my developer tools and being able to select the element that I want, changing everything live on the screen, and then going back and putting that back into my code and saving it to make it live in our websites, making everything look pretty again.
So I think Connor and I are going to touch on our team agreement because we think it's a really the necessary part. We sat down and wrote a group agreement, and on our second day, of this project, we actually got into a conflict and we had to go back and rewrite and replan and come up with an action plan, which has brought us all back together, and we were able to move past it with nothing residual, and hopefully and get strong, like we're just stronger for it. So I think it's a very necessary thing.
Yeah, so a couple things that I really liked about our group agreement was our communication plan for communicating outside of like an in-person setting, and also how we communicate during an issue or during a conflict, and how we navigate those kind of sometimes turbulent waters. In our conflict plan, we try to imagine certain scenarios that could come up, and we really spent a lot of time discussing how we would want to handle that going forward. And lastly, my really favorite part of this whole agreement was how we did how we tried to sort of flow with GitHub and everything. How we did our merge parties, how we pulled what branches, how we kind of brought everything together. Doing this plan early on saved so many headaches down the road. It was really, really nice. Okay, and then leading into things that we're most proud of, besides that, for me personally, I was most proud of getting that timer to work when we wanted it. We wanted to stop it when we wanted to, and then get the values to calculate the scores. And because it caused me so much trouble to begin with, getting past that hurdle and then having all these guys jump on it with me was really, really fun.
So what I was most excited to show people was the Meet the Team, which I worked on flipping our cards and adding the links and the way that they're all positioned, like our logo.
So the part that I was most proud of was just contributing to the overall style and feel of the site, the modern look. It was a really fun opportunity to take it from a wireframe and being able to build it kind of from scratch, scaffolding out the HTML and adding the CSS. And I was also really excited to work on part of the input validation, making the box shape when you enter an incorrect key. So that was a JavaScript side that I got to work on as well.
And I was going to say, actually, something that was really cool about this team, that we made sure that even if we had strengths, that we touched everything. So even though we may mention certain things more than others, all of us touched all of the components of the site together. But for me personally, the coolest part was at the end, because we had done this, our like problem domain model up front, and spent a lot of time looking at like how the site was going to be laid out, and what was the flow of the different functions and how they would play together. And so we thought about it so much up front that like afterwards it was just about doing each of the separate components. And for me, the best part was at the end when we were able to take all of them and kind of mesh them together. And it actually really went really well. There was a few bugs that we had to work out, but because we thought about it so much up front, they all just kind of came together. So we are Team Aquamarine, and this is our Typing++ project, and we're open for any questions.
How's the work schedule working out for you? I mean, it's pretty intensive timing that you guys are putting in.
Yeah, it's a big dedication, I think, for everybody, like the time in class and the time outside of class. I have it personally a lot easier, I think, because I don't have kids. So I get to kind of go home and work on things. But these guys
Incredibly patient spouses, I think, that have really been helping out with our kids and stepping up, and it's fun. But we're looking forward to our big break, I won't lie. It'll be nice. It is a lot to come home and spend 3 or 4 hours a night after a long day doing more coding, trying to retain everything.
I feel very much the same way. It's all for our families that have been able to do so much. But I think the one thing that's great about it is I think all of us are enjoying it so much that it's not draining in the same way that something else might be. So we get home and like sometimes it's hard to disconnect from the process because you're like thinking of a problem and you want to answer it. Find a solution. You have a question, Jasper?
It's more impossible, but it's so awesome how you did all that.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine how someone.
Thank you.
You're next.
That's how you can share your contact.
Also, more technical questions. Did you guys use any third-party libraries?
No.
It was all vanilla.
Oh, no. If you guys had to do the whole project over again, what would you guys do different?
I think one aspect, so something that bugged me was like one of those little things, the timer bar, those little bugs that are attached to it. It's really hard the way we had designed it because we did it scaling. And so it's really hard the way we were, it just kept squishing the bugs. I think if we were to do it again, I would love to have the bugs sitting on top and find a way that they come down. And part of that is if we designed it, I think with less absolutes, and maybe if there's, I think there's other ways
We figured out how to change the animation, but then going back last night and changing all the JavaScript work for it, we already had more bugs. Once we didn't want. Did you have another one, or was that?
Or through other parts that we.
Is there another thing you would change? Like what would you?
No, I mean, for me, like, it was still really nice that everything kind of came together really well at the end, as well as it did. Kind of surprised me. I think if we could do it over again, I would spend a little bit more time in that project, like that planning phase, and really looking at the structure going forward, so that it was a little bit less. We didn't, like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of massaging to do to get things to work, but I think if we had fleshed it out a little bit more to start, things could have just rolled a little bit easier as problems arose.
How did you guys test the application?
What?
How did you guys test it? Did you guys have any automated tests? Did you guys have a test plan like user stories that you would have? Any thoughts on that?
We had our instructors test it quite a few times.
They'll be learning automated testing going. Sure.
Definitely user testing.
Everything user testing.
And we didn't have our user stories to begin with that we thought of that kind of helped guide how we wanted the project to go. So when we were testing, we saw something that happened that was a little funky, we refer back to that. Make adjustments.
And we kind of had 4 days to get it done. So the last part of it was to do it from beginning to end. The last part of it was we were trying to put it up on the website, which was last night, and the links and like the domain hosting, it just wasn't driving. So we were hoping to actually send that out and let other people use it, like via Facebook or something else, and get other user input. But it was one of those things. If we had more time, we would have done more.
So is your database only local storage? Do you know what devices it works on right now, or what devices you're focused on?
It does not work on a phone, and I think we decided it's because we're testing key presses on the backside and we don't have key presses on the phone.
So we'd have to do like both things at the same time, which would be another thing we could work on.
And as far as like device like screen sizes, laptop screen, it's not quite fully responsive yet. I think we're just going into a lot of that.
This is
Next course.
You have too many questions. Too many needs from us.
Jasper,
Didn't you say that the bugs were going to the line instead of you trying to see them?
That was one of our goals. That was a stretch goal.
so another goal that we would have tried to do is to animate those little bugs so they were like munching on the line as it went down. But again, time constraints.
I would have said that you could use it so that the fire, you were trying to see the fire going out, like all the water was melting, and you were trying to stop it from melting before it got to full.
And that would be good user input for us to build the next version. Do we have?
On that line, if you had another week to work on this project, what would your plan be?
A whole week.
Another week, if you could add as much to the site as you want.
It's a lot more time than I was expecting.
I think for me, one of the things was like the way that the levels incremented, like thinking about how to make them get sequentially harder, and maybe to have like more and more code, or like to start with like a simple concept like variable declaration, and then have each level sort of include the previous, but then add new concepts. And so like by the end, you're doing regex or something weird. It's just a lot of funky characters.
We also had, when we were just kind of spitballing this whole idea, we had an idea of gamifying it a little bit more, where there was animation at the bottom of like some little hero or heroine that's like fighting off the bugs every time you increase the level. So adding more animation and game style to it would definitely be up there.
Definitely, that was mine too. It's just adding more animation, animating the logo when you came in. I was working on that one last night. Couldn't quite get there. But just in general, adding more interactivity.
How would you describe a typical day in the past month? What was your work day like?
You want to take it?
A lot of computer. So a typical day during this or during our whole class?
The past month.
Well, there's two different sections to that. One is our project week, which is we're pretty much on our own and we just work cohesively as a team. So that was the last like four days. And then before that, we would have lecture in the morning and then lunch, and then we would have lab in the afternoon. So it's 8 to 5 with an hour lunch in the middle. So it's just going over prior, whatever we had done yesterday, we would go over and try to make sure we understood it for like the first hour, and then introducing new concepts for the next like 2 hours, and then implementing those new concepts at lab after lunch.
The beginning of the week was a lot of fun because they threw a lot at us on like Monday and Tuesday, and then they let us kind of spend some time refining it as the week goes on. So Monday and Tuesday were our tougher days because we'd be learning new concepts and they just kind of throw it at us, and we had this big lab we would finish, we'd go home and finish them, and then as the week progressed, it got a little bit more manageable.
And each lab that we would get would have basic MVP goals to have a working product, and then they would also have stretch goals. And it always felt like you're just, especially that first half of the week, before you could get a concept, they're putting new concepts on there. So I think it was great because I think it met each of us kind of where we were at and challenged all of us to one degree or another. But I cannot believe looking back in just 3.5 weeks how much I learned. I know for sure, but I think how much we learned as a team.
They all go home and do more, and I go home and I'm like, nope, that's it for the day. I can't, because I just can't, I don't want to burn myself out, but they're very good about going home and continuing to do it. And I'll do some reading, but I won't usually touch my code at night just because I feel like I get frustrated if I don't have help, and then I won't be happy doing it. So I've tried to find like a work-home balance.
So on the first day of the breakfast, you guys said that from orientation to from the first day, you wish you'd gotten the prep materials a little sooner. Do you still feel that way? And
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I still do. That week was a very crammed week. I'm looking forward to having 2 weeks to do the pre-work. But I mean, it was manageable. It kind of prepped us for how quick.
Some of us had more experience in JavaScript before than others.
That's true.
So it would have really helped me because I felt like I was coming in like completely as a novice. I think Megan probably felt the same. And so it was a lot of like just getting what is a for loop? What is it? I had no clue what any of this verbiage was. So learning a new vocabulary, learning how to read it, learning how to understand it, and then implement it in the code. It was a lot. And I think the more chance that we had to play with it in Khan Academy or anywhere else, I found myself going back every weekend and doing it again just to become more familiar. So,
and then on that same line with what's gone on in the last 3 weeks, is there anything else that we can do to support or that would be helpful for this process?
Catered lunches daily, would you tell us? Yeah, I know. I told them I'm only showing up if there's food. So
I think for me, just a better upfront plan of what's coming. Knowing that we basically started preparing for this whole presentation yesterday at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we hadn't written any of what we were doing today. So I think if I had like last weekend to do that, and it would have been a little bit more helpful. But I'm a planner. I like to have things really rehearsed before I get up in front of people. Did you feel that way?
I feel like the only thing I was thinking about was just having more time on too, because part of it too is I was finishing up my job, so I actually was working that last week up until, so I had to like work after work and putting the boys to bed and stuff, and then I could work on the prep materials. So it was a little bit challenging to do that in a week, but I think otherwise I've been very appreciative of the support that we've had so far. It's been, I think, very supportive. And the instructors have been awesome.
Yeah, our instructors have been really good.
The classroom environment has been really great. Like they really, the way that they approach the materials is to allow us the opportunity to ask questions throughout too. So a lot of times our lectures and everything were really sort of question driven, and using those questions to sort of drive the process of learning more about the concepts that they're trying to go over with it, which felt like very inclusive in a learning process. I appreciate that.
I'm curious about the group work and sort of scaling this program later on. If you were to, try to do that, is the size of the group appropriate, like 4 in a team, or would you prefer to have 8 in a team, or would you do 2 4s? You see what I'm asking there? Yeah. I'm just kind of looking into the future, really. And
yeah.
I feel like more people, more problems in a way, because everybody's kind of touching everything. And so I think with more people, there would be the possibility for more merge conflicts. And with us being so small, we literally sit at 2 tables across from each other within like reaching distance. And so it's easy to kind of get up and be like, oh, what are you doing? Do you need help with this? And move over. I like 4.
Yeah, it seems like a good number to me.
Yeah.
So I was sort of thinking, well, 2 parallel teams of 4 would be 8 in a class.
Oh yeah, that's how they do it. Is they have like 20, 30 students into 4 teams, but we're just the first go. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they also mentioned that sometimes the project sizes, like the group comes up with a project that isn't quite as demanding, and then sometimes they'll like narrow down how big the teams are, but otherwise they shoot for like 4 people on a team. So this worked out well.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah. Any more questions? Okay.
Sweet.
Thank you all for coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
Go team Aqua!
Invite you across the hall. We have some lunch, so lunch, drinks, we ask you have a room reserved for lunch. Thank you.